Good to go?
Cool.
All right, we're back again, this time in lovely Hamilton. We've been traveling around a bit for these. We're in the Rentschler building, second floor, Wraith Games. I'm with Jay Kidd.
Hello.
He's the guy that said he wanted to play in video games and build them for a job when he was a kid, like a lot of kids do, but you've actually done it. So congrats on that. I think a lot of kids want to build video games when they're young, or they say that.
Oh yeah, it's the dream, you know.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of parents probably discourage that. I don't know how adults around you felt when you were a kid when you first told them that. Tell the story.
So when I was 8 years old, that was the point when I absolutely knew. Before that, I wanted to be like an astronaut or something, but I think it was in the cards that I was going to be a little too short for being an astronaut. And I was playing Mario, and I was like involved in it, and it clicked like somewhere deep in my subconscious. Like, I need to make video games. Not want, I needed to do this. And I went up to my mom, like, Mom, I know what I want to do for a living. And she's like, what do you want to do? I want to make video games. And she was so disappointed. like I shattered her soul. Her big expectation for me was that I was going to go to Harvard and I was going to become a doctor or at very least a famous artist. And she's like, honey, you can't make video games. That's not a real job. And I'm like, Mom, these games are like $90. Like, someone's making money somewhere. And at that point, that's when I knew.
And you ended up being right, looks like. You got a business, and you've been in business how long? This is not a new thing.
No, yeah, we've been in business for 20 years now. This is our third studio spot here in Hamilton. It kind of started back in high school. That sort of 8-year-old me saying I wanted to make video games, that never died. And I was making all sorts of like paper prototypes and everything. And when I got to high school, I realized, wow, they can teach me the skills that I need in order to do this. So I went to my guidance counselor and I told her, I'm like, look, put me in every single class that has the word computer anywhere in the description. And she's like, I'm gonna need your mom to sign off on this. And so I had to go home and beg and plead with my mom, and she did it. And so for a solid year, my sophomore year, I was just learning things computer related. And that was actually the year I ended up founding Wraith Games. At the time, we were called Mind's Eye Games. That lasted for about 6 months, and then we found something cooler. So,
You've been Wraith for a long time, though.
Oh yeah.
And I knew I was surprised when I met you, and then I found out you had a business building video games here in Hamilton, Ohio. I didn't know anyone did that in Hamilton, but I think probably a lot of people hopefully will see this video and be surprised. I think it'd be good for kids. I'm sure there's kids out there now that want to get in the video game industry, don't know how, don't know if it's possible. Probably got a parent right now giving them the same look your mom did. And it's good to see that things are possible in different industries. So I mean, really excited to do this video just for that alone, because you know, when I was a kid, I kind of always wanted to be a lawyer, but I kind of wasn't sure, and I kind of gave up on it and then came back to it, you know, later in life. But it's interesting to meet someone that knew what they were going to do when they were 8 years old and then actually follow through on it.
Well, that was always kind of a problem with me growing up. I always knew what I wanted and then single-mindedly pursued it until it happened. And according to my mom, that was like the most annoying thing about me. Certainly not the standard way of going about it, but hey, it's what I am.
Yeah, sometimes you have to be single-minded about something to get it done. What's the hardest thing about breaking into an industry like this? I'm assuming it's not that easy. I mean, anyone can open a computer and just start trying to build something, I guess, but how to actually make it work and successful and get a video game commercialized off the ground, how hard is that?
So there are different aspects of it that are hard for other reasons. So we like to say that making video games is something that everyone can do now. You know, this barrier to entry has completely left. You know, if you're wanting to make something for the computer, Steam, the biggest computer platform for video games, makes it incredibly easy for you to upload whatever you want. Same thing with itch.io. Itch.io, they don't take any fees or anything. You can just take the game that you've made and put it up there. You have all these engines like Godot and Unity, Unreal, all of these toolkits that allow you to make games. They sort of help you along the way. All of them are free now. We've gotten to a point where you don't really pay for what we call middleware. Now, the thing is that it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of dedication. There are people who are doing this, what we call solo dev. And solo devs are like, oh, well, I do all the art, I do all the music, I do all the programming, I do everything. if you have a lot of time, if you are in high school, if you are, you know, taking a sabbatical year before you go off to college, whatever you're doing, that is a lot easier if you have learned the skills that you're going to be using to make these games.
Yeah.
However, one of the big things is if you're not a programmer and you are, say, an artist, or you're a game designer but you're not an artist or what have you, finding like-minded people who are willing to work with you, that is the first barrier that you're going to have. For me, you know, I gathered around my group of friends and we all decided we wanted to make games together. And that was absolutely wonderful. That's not going to happen for everybody. Well, once you have this dedicated crew and you've gotten all your free middleware and everything, and you've really gotten down there and made a game that you think is good, it isn't. No one makes a good game on their first try. Most of the time, people aren't making even passable games until their fifth, sixth game. That's why we like to say you try to fail quickly and you try to follow the fun. Follow the fun is this kind of like a Stephen King, kill your darlings kind of a thing, where if something isn't working, you need to know to drop it. You need to know that, like, this is bad, we're not going to continue to pursue it. But with fail early, that's kind of the same idea. The idea that, okay, this isn't working, we're going to drop it, we're going to move on, keep going. Even when all that happens, now that the barrier to entry is so low, now that everyone with a little bit of computer knowledge thinks that they can make a video game, there are so many other people doing this, that even if you have the best game in the world, getting that little bit of spotlight on you so that your game can be successful, so you can start making money, so you can start turning this hobby into a real business, man, that is the single hardest thing. We here at Wraith, we like to say that other game developers aren't really your competition. Because, like, when you're doing indie games, you're selling games for, you know, anywhere between like $3 to like $25. People who buy games, they buy a lot of games. You know, if you make an indie puzzle game and someone in Massachusetts makes one and then someone in Korea makes one, you're not really competing against each other. In fact, people who buy their game are more likely to buy your game. But the platforms that host these games, they're your real competition.
Okay.
They're the ones who are saying, okay, we're going to highlight this game, we're going to promote this, we're going to do all of these advertisements for it and everything. And working in that system, that's what kills you. And so you just have to weather the storm.
And talk about your role here. You're the president of the board, but everyone's an owner here. It's a collective, I think you said. So kind of an interesting setup. Talk a little bit about that, and then talk about how your role is kind of like you don't get to build the games as much as you used to. Maybe day to day, you got other things to do.
So you know, there's this idea of what is called a workers' cooperative. Now, workers' cooperatives, Ohio has the oldest workers' cooperative laws on the books. There have been other places in the 13 colonies that had workers' cooperatives. In fact, the earliest workers' cooperatives in the U.S. were founded by Benjamin Franklin, which is nuts. It's that old.
Yeah.
But some of the oldest law on cooperatives was here in Ohio. They really codified that. And that means that Ohio has this like workers' cooperative spirit about it. You know, oftentimes like farmers. A lot of people don't know this, but big companies like Ocean Spray, they're all workers' cooperatives. What that ultimately means is that every single person who works for that company is also a co-owner in that company. So we do this, and all 8 of us, all the members of Wraith, are equal owners. Now, we're what's called a collective. A collective is one step further. Normally in a cooperative, you would, I don't know, say you have 40 people. You would elect 10 of them to a board, and then you just do elections every year. And that board, it represents all of those 40 people. Everyone has a vote and everything, but the representative democracy is the important part. In a collective, every single person is always a member of that board. They're always not just people who are ownership, but they are also leadership as well. And that creates kind of an interesting sort of thing with us. There is no boss here at Wraith. I was the first person at the table, but I'm not the boss. Now, being that I'm the president of the board, that has given us a lot of additional responsibilities, but I'm still not the boss, but we're all leaders. If, say, Chris, one of our artists, if he wants to make a project that is very arts driven and he has a vision for it, he is the leader of that project. If Lucas wants to make a game, he's the leader of that project. Stevie, if she wants to do something, she's the leader. And so it sort of leapfrogs around. With me though, my passion, I'm not a programmer really. I'm not an artist so much anymore, like a digital artist. I used to be a lot more. I'm a creative director and a lead designer. I'm the one who's making a lot of decisions on a lot of our big projects. That mostly comes down to my age, honestly. I'm the most senior here at the company. Not the oldest, but the most senior. With that though, and with those responsibilities of being creative director, and with the responsibilities of leading the board, it's so hard for me to actually go in, get my hands dirty, and make now. We were actually having a board meeting last night where it was half joked, like, Jay, why don't you program this one? Because we're working on what's called a game jam, where you make a game in a week. Usually not for money, it's just a cool activity to do. And it's just like, nope, I'm not gonna do that, because I know that I don't have the time anymore to dedicate to doing that. That's because, I might be sending emails out to Nintendo or Sony. I might be having client meetings. I might be doing stuff like this. I might be going to the Chamber of Commerce. A lot of my role has now become very administrative in addition to design oriented.
Yeah, it's similar to me at the law firm. As you grow, there's just more people on the team and more things need to be done by somebody that is not actually on that work that started the business. It's interesting. It's happened to me too. It keeps you busy. A lot of jumping around, a lot of meetings. I do like that, but part of what got you into this is probably like actually getting your hands dirty at the beginning. So sometimes I miss some of the things I used to do, but I think it's for the better. Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to go to these meetings. Not everybody wants to. A lot of times people that are really good technically are not always the one that wants to go out and be the face of things. Tell us a little bit about your most successful, I guess, or your most known game. You said it was added in the Smithsonian, one of their exhibits, so it's pretty cool. Talk about that a little bit.
So that's Collapsus. Collapsus is a block crunching puzzle game. It's about gravity manipulation and resource mechanics, or resource management. It has a full screen of blocks. You click on an individual block to break it, remove it, and you lose a resource. When you get some of that back, you get closer and closer to leveling up, and you get more of those resources back as well. But you can actually physically take your device and rotate it so that it changes the direction that gravity falls in. That's something you don't really see in games. And we've been working on this one for a while, and still no one has poached this mechanic yet, which is mind-blowing. We ended up winning, I think, about 12 different industry awards for that. We were nominated for about 12 others. A few of them are accessibility awards. Collapsus is really, a studio entirely, honestly, is really focused on accessibility for disabled players. If you're blind, if you're deaf, if you're paraplegic, if you have limited mobility, etc., we want you to be able to play our games. And we put a lot of design focus on making sure that everyone can play.
Could you explain that a little bit? How could someone who's blind, and I'm just completely ignorant to this myself, how could someone who's blind play a video game that I guess would be somewhat fast moving? Could you explain how you did that?
So with Collapsus is turns oriented. And so when you make a move, it does turns, kind of like in chess.
Okay.
And so
it's not like Tetris where it's moving fast.
Exactly.
Okay, I got you.
In fact, people have called it Tetris in reverse. Which, by the way, you want to talk about a good soundbite for a trailer?
Right, yeah.
Get a member of press to say that. And so the thing is that with this, much like in chess, you can have a screen narrator tell you, okay, there's a triangle block on E5, and it'll tell you the surrounding blocks as well.
Gotcha.
But there's something even more important to that as well, and this speaks to the whole fast-moving games thing as well. Fun fact, most people who are legally blind are not fully blind. In fact, it's 0.001% of the population or something that is actually fully blind. People who you might see out with a dog and a cane and everything, they probably do have some sort of very, very, very limited eyesight. Even if it's just, okay, I can see pinholes of light. And so we have used the standards of the National Federation for the Blind to create a high contrast mode where everything on the screen is black, except for all the stuff that is information is very, very high contrast, and you can toggle that on. And so even if our game is moving really, really fast, like a Mario or Tetris or something, those people might be able to actually play that way. Same thing with adjustable font size. You can make the text on the screen bigger so that you can read it. We have a blind playtester. He's a YouTuber, and when he plays the game, he puts it right up to his face, and it's because it's the only place that he can see the game. But it works for him, and it's because people see disability as like, okay, we have, you either are this thing or you aren't this thing, and that's not how disability is. That's not how people are. For sure.
Yeah, my mom actually worked with visually impaired, and a lot of them, they could see. Some of them could see enough to walk without a cane. Some of them needed a cane, and there was a lot in between. Some could read if it was close. So just making games more accessible in general. Are there a lot of companies that kind of focus on that like you guys do?
Not really. So accessibility has become really popular in the last 5 years. And I'm not entirely sure why. There have been some great advocacy groups out there, like I Can Play That, Able Gamers. There have been these organizations that have really cared to do that. But I think there's been a sea change just in general. Now, we've been focused on accessibility for at least 15 years now. And we've won these accessibility awards. We've been accessibility advocates. We have advised people. We've had clients come in here and ask us how they can make their own games accessible. I was actually brought out to San Francisco during Game Developers Conference. They have a games accessibility conference at the same time. And so I spoke to a whole bunch of industry professionals about, okay, here was our journey making Collapsus accessible. Here's what you guys can do as well. There are people who make World of Warcraft or make Forza. The guy who made Forza, the lead guy was the speaker right before me, in fact. It was mind-blowing. But people are starting to care. They're starting to notice. And in a certain way, it's a little selfish, because people who have disabilities are consumers in the same way that anyone who plays a video game is a consumer.
For sure.
This is a market of people who are not being serviced by a whole industry. And people are realizing, whoa, you're telling me that 10% of our entire player base, has some sort of disability, and you're telling me that no one is taking their money, no one is getting them to buy their products because they won't take, 3 extra days to put a life-changing feature into their game? That's just money on the table. And so we care a lot because our team is majority disabled. We're a minority owned and operated business in general. And so we have a unique perspective from that. We're making games from a disabled lens, and we're making games for disabled players. But at the same time, the industry needs to realize that if they're gonna leave this money on the table, someone else is gonna come and scoop it up. It just makes good business sense to make broadly accessible games.
Yeah, it can be something that comes from a passion and a good-hearted place, but you can also make money from it at the same time, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And even on the flip side, even if you are a greedy, money-hungry pirate who just wants to do it for the money, you're still making games that could make a blind person smile. You're still making games that someone in a wheelchair can finally experience something that they wouldn't have been able to before. So no matter how you're approaching it, it is a great shame when people aren't doing it.
Yeah, for sure. Nothing obviously nothing I would have ever even thought about until I was speaking to you about it. Is there anything that you would say to kids out there who maybe want to do this like you did? We were talking about earlier, to maybe the 12-year-old out there who plays a lot. They play a lot of video games right now, but they think they want to get into it. Where would you even start?
So I have a few pieces of advice. They actually send us out to talk to children a lot. I've helped a couple of different schools create game development programs for both the middle school and high school level.
Are any of those local?
No, they're not actually, which is none of the local schools.
Well, there's a start. Let's get it together.
That is something we would really hope for. It's wow, cool. gonna go help Talawanda. Why is Hamilton High not giving us a contact? But that's a whole other thing. There are a few pieces of advice. Piece of advice number one is going to sound incredibly, incredibly harsh, but we tell this to people all the time. Do not make games because you like playing games.
It's a difference.
It's a very big difference. You know, they talk about film directors and how film directors have a difficulty watching movies because they're keenly aware, well, the boom mic is just off shot over there. You know, they know, okay, well, that weather effect was created by doing this or this. And it doesn't make watching a movie worse for a director or a special effects artist or whatever. It just makes it different. You know, oftentimes, you know, you're watching these films as a director and you get a little chuckle. Maybe you shouldn't get a little chuckle when a xenomorph is running down the hallway and you just happen to know where the boom mic is. Because the artifice of it is completely on full display. There is no suspension of disbelief. And the same thing is true for game development. When you start making games seem a lot smaller. You see the limitations. You see why choices were made, when choices were made, where choices were made. And it's something that completely upturns your ability to play games the way that you played games before. Only make games if you have a passion for making, if you have a story you want to tell, and the only way to tell that story is through an interactive lens, if you need people to play that thing that you've made, and you are willing to sacrifice caring about games in the same way that you did before, that's when you make it. You gotta be a little bit of a weirdo to want to make games. I see a lot of people go into this and they say, I love games, I want to make games, and it completely ruins the passion of playing games for them. And no one should ever take that away from someone. Playing games is a wonderful thing.
That's the sound clip. I'm just helping out my videographer that when we do the short, that you have to be a little bit of a weirdo to want to make games. I think that's probably going to be the preview. Yeah, but if that's the advice, it's advice, and I believe it. You probably never see a video. You probably don't see Mario now like you did when you were a little kid. It's like seeing the, Santa Claus or whatever is not there, like probably ruins the magic a little bit, you think?
It does. But again, there's a new magic.
Yeah.
The Santa Claus analogy is great because once you realize that the Santa at the mall is a real person, it might inspire you to one day put on that costume yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important.
Yeah, it's just as much fun being Santa Claus, I think.
Exactly.
Maybe more so.
Now, another thing is avoid degrees programs that are games specific. You got a lot of universities and everything that are trying to offer you games specific degrees. And that is great, and that is wonderful. But this is an incredibly, incredibly competitive industry. We exist on what's called the independent side of things. You also then have the AAA side. Much like with film, you have indie film, and then you have the big Hollywood blockbusters.
Yeah.
These games degrees are catering to the Hollywood blockbuster side of things, and that side of the industry is so incredibly competitive. I have a friend who her entire job is she works at a big Japanese firm, and all she does is 3D model rocks. Every day, she gets up, she models rocks, she goes home, and she hates it, but she knows that if she expresses that hatred for 3D modeling rocks all the time, she's not going to have a job because they're going to replace her with a bright and bushy new intern or whatever. And it's not where you want to be. That AAA space, these degrees target that. And if you say, I don't know, go work for Sega, and you're only working for Sega for 2-3 years, and you can't find anywhere else to work in. If you're working for Sega for 2-3 years and you can't find anywhere else after that because all of these new young people have these new technical skills and you're just no longer desirable in this market, that games degree is not going to get you a job at P&G.
Yeah.
What you need to do is you need to maybe take a games minor or take some games classes that your university offers, but then focus on, okay, if you're a programmer, get a computer science degree. Just get something that gives you that general programming and then create your own sort of games space to work with that in order to be able to translate that skill. Same thing for like fine arts. Like for instance, Chris Quay, our sort of lead artist, he's a bachelor's of fine arts from UC. a games degree would not help him if for whatever reason he decides to no longer be here.
Yeah.
And as much as a games degree will teach you things that you need to know, if you walk into a place and they see on your resume that you have a games degree, they're going to take you less seriously. It's an unfortunate fact of life. So while these programs are absolutely stellar, I don't think that they're where we need to be as an industry or in the educational system, personally. And the third piece of advice that I would give is start making as early as possible. Download some tools, even if you don't know how to use them, watch a few YouTube tutorials, and start making as quickly as you can, and fail fast. You follow the fun, you fail fast, you make something interesting. If your first 5 games are gonna be terrible, then make those first 5 games this week. We like to say that when we started out, we had our 50 terrible prototypes. All 50 of the first little games that we made were awful, but they were also made over the course of the first 2 years. We were iterating quickly.
How many have you made total? Do you have any idea? That sucked, let's say, or didn't end up good, I guess.
I would say in total, if you count every little project that didn't get off the ground, every game jam we've been in, everything, probably about 80. Yeah. As far as commercially available products that are either available for purchase or will soon be available for purchase, the answer is 5. So that's a very big difference.
Less than 10%. But that probably is normal, I would think. Like you said, you got to fail a lot before you get one that works.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about, you said you got 4 or 5 that are available to at least download it, and even if they're not completely done.
Mm-hmm.
Where do people go to find those?
So Fly Guy was commercially available for a really long time. You'd go to Congregate for that. I think you can technically still go to Congregate and get it, but that was 2011.
Okay.
So while a commercial project, Radarkanoid, which was the next one, you can find that on itch.io. Probably best, honestly, to go to the Radarkanoid tab of our website, wraithgames.com. Collapses, the one that we've been working on for very, very long, the one that you mentioned was in the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
You can get that on itch.io. You can wish list it on Steam, or you can go to our website under the Collapses tab.
So on the website, it's probably the easiest for any of them?
I'd say so. With Collapses, when it's fully released, because it's in what we call early access right now. Mm-hmm. With Collapses, when it comes out, it's coming out on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, Mac, Linux, and PC if you Steam and itch.io, iOS, and Android. It's going to be all across the gamut.
Nice.
And those were a lot of deals that we had to make.
Probably learned a lot along the way with those business deals, just like you learn a lot building the games. It's a whole other thing doing the business, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. It never ends. Let's talk a little bit about Hamilton. We got the nice view of the courthouse right on a popular corner here downtown. What kind of advantage do you think, if you've even thought about it, does being headquartered in a place like Hamilton give you versus in a bigger city where things are going to be expensive, a space like this? And you talk about San Francisco.
I think right there.
What would how much would it be to have a place like this in a big city?
Yeah, so not going to lie, our space right here is our 3rd space. It is about 1,000 square feet, and it costs us $700 a month. And they pay for all the electricity and everything.
What a deal.
Yeah. If we were to get a comparable space in a place like San Francisco, oh my goodness, like we're talking like $20,000. I have seen a couple of places in Hamilton where they're literally like, it's $30 a square foot. And it's just like, how about $3 per square foot? And then I'll still try to talk you down a little bit. Hamilton, I remember this distinctly. And this was when we went to DC for the Smithsonian thing. I was talking to some people about how expensive their burritos were. Because I usually go to Chipotle when I'm flying because it's cheap food. I go up there, and this was, right before the pandemic. And it's like, okay, well, the burrito I normally get here in Hamilton at the time was $8. Go to DC, it was $18. $18 for a burrito. Now, we're laughing now because that's what the burrito costs now, but this was
we catch
2019.
Yeah.
Well, the thing was that I was talking to these people at DC, and they're like, yeah, I don't understand the problem. So when I fly the next week to San Francisco, I'm talking to some people from Warner Brothers, and we were having a grand old time, and they're like, wow, we didn't even know that Ohio had game studios. And I'm like, yeah, Ohio has like 50 game studios. We got a lot of this. We're the only ones in Hamilton, of course, but we have a surprisingly vibrant games industry.
That's cool.
We're even the headquarters of the Midwest's largest games expo, GDEX. So we're doing something right. But I'm talking to these Warner Brothers guys, and I'm like, yeah, talking to these DC guys. They're talking about having an $18 burrito is normal. And they're like, where are you getting a burrito for $18? That's so cheap. I mean, yeah, Chipotle. And they're like, yeah, like the cheapest burrito at Chipotle is like $23. My soul died. And they were legitimately, they're like, how much are your burritos? I'm like, $8. You get a
eat before you fly. You know?
Yeah, exactly. The rent is cheap here. The like for not just the studio space, but also like living here. Mortgages are cheap here. The price of living in general is cheap here. And Hamilton specifically has this, you know, we like to say it has the biggest small town energy. We in Hamilton are the 10th largest city in the state of Ohio.
Yeah.
And no one believes me when I tell them that.
Yeah.
It's, you know, we have these 63,000 people, and it still feels like Mayberry sometimes. You know, everyone knows everyone here. You know, everyone's friendly, you know, like waving as they're crossing the street. It is this wonderful sense of camaraderie. I honestly blame that on 17 Strong a little bit. You know, they're all out there being like, oh, we're all neighbors and everything. Well, it worked.
Yeah.
You don't get that in San Francisco. You don't get that in DC. We have something very, very unique here. And we have things like this. You know, what other, you know, business owners are going to take the time to come in, talk with other people in the community, you know, uplift, you know, the community at large? That doesn't happen. You know, this is something truly unique and something truly wonderful.
Yeah, Hamilton's a special place, and I think small towns in Ohio in general are special. I get to go to a lot of them, and there's a lot going on, and I think they're going to keep getting better. I'm kind of like real positive about small town or mid or top 10. You know, we're in the top 10 now, I guess, size. This still feels like a small town sometimes.
It really does.
And it's a good place to have a business, specifically for someone like you. And I know I've talked to Tommy at Lemon Grenade. He you know, has clients. You can have clients or sell your games outside of Hamilton, but being here, you can kind of like, I wouldn't say undercut other people, but you just, everything's a little bit cheaper here. So when you do something, it doesn't cost you as much as if you're in a bigger city. And if one of your clients is in New York City, that they're almost shocked at how you can do something here cheaper. I think it's an advantage. And after COVID, the world's became so small. I think people are more used to working with people that are not necessarily down the street. So it's going to be interesting. If you had one more thing to tell people Hamilton about Wraith Games and where you're going, or your dream for this, or your guys' as a collective dream, I guess, what would it be? Or something they should know?
Well, I would say that Wraith is proof that anyone can make games if that is something they truly care about. It doesn't take a multi-million-dollar firm to make something that can be considered culturally significant, that can get these industry awards. You don't have to have multi-million dollars to see your game on Nintendo or on PlayStation or on Xbox. What it takes is dedicated people who want to learn how to do things right, who get their vision and really distill it down to the best possible version of that vision. People will buy your games. People will see that passion. People will take you seriously, and you can exist in this industry. You know, we see a lot of times people who during the pandemic, their lives have changed completely, and they have quit their dead-end jobs to take cast irons that they have purchased from Goodwill, strip them down and resell them. And they're making a living doing that because it's something they care about, something they're interested in. We see all these people, you know, making all these homemade jams and pickles and everything. With Art Space across the street, you know, we see people who are saying, you know what? I learned how to paint during the pandemic, and I'm going to get out there, I'm going to paint, and I'm going to actually put them in this gallery, and I'm going to sell these paintings. And we've had so many success stories of people turning this into their full-time job. We live in a world now, and we live in an economy now, where if you can afford to learn a skill and you can afford to honestly care about your future, to step out of that grind and to take the time to build something, especially if you can build it with people you care about, you will succeed.
Yeah, and I think that's in any industry almost.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
if
is.
you got to believe in it, and you gotta maybe get solely focused on it sometimes. I know I've been guilty of that, but if you push hard enough, it's there. But you got to care about it. You kind of have to be all in on it. You can't. I don't think you can halfway do it. I think you got to really push, and and take your lumps along the way. I think it's not going to be easy. I can tell you that. Running a business, I'm sure you've learned a lot of hard lessons along the way.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the journey, and take the good with the bad. And I think I love running a business, even though some days it can get you down, but more good days than bad. I mean, if you're doing that, I think in life, you're probably winning.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, there is truly nothing better than being your own boss. And there's truly nothing better than being the master of your own destiny and being in control of the direction you want to go into. And so many people say, well, I can't do that. Well, you've never tried.
Yeah.
You need to try.
You got to believe it. You got to believe in yourself. And I think a lot of people sell themselves short. I know I did when I was younger. And sometimes you get that imposter syndrome, but you got to keep pushing through it. If you can't do it, someone else is going to. So it might as well be you, I think. Man, Jay, I really appreciate you letting us come up here, check out your cool office. It's very purple. I like it. It puts you in a good mood. I think you got to be in a good mood if you're building games.
That's true.
All right. Well, if you don't have anything else, I'll let you get back to it. I know you got some calls to make, and the fire inspector is here. You got a lot going on. I'll get out of your hair.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much for having me on.
That was awesome. I'm gonna have to go home and tell my kid I met a video game designer. Maybe we can find your game and play it.